Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
I'm Sal Abenanti, and I'm here on Kickstarter to ask for your support to produce my 115-page color graphic novel, The Hostage. Hostage is set in the streets of Rio de Janeiro, based on the plight of the street children that live in the favelas. In the world of the graphic novel, being murdered daily, and the hostage is the evil spirit that is raised to avenge their death. Origins go all the way back to the indigenous tribes of the Amazon as the spirits that protect children, especially murdered children. The level of death that these kids have to endure every day. They have nowhere to sleep. They have no place to eat. They have to survive off of begging. There were nobody in capes that were coming to save these kids.
Ironside will not be seen tonight, so we may bring you the following special program.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Trump is here. I'm happy to welcome Josh Williamson back to Word Balloon. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, too.
Have we done video yet, or is this the first time? I know.
We did video.
Okay, because I know we did Black Friday, a couple months ago, but I couldn't remember in the summer if we, because wasn't it summer last time we talked, or no?
No, I think it was 2019. I
think
it was like summer of 2019 was last time we actually talked. Yeah.
All right, there you go. COVID year, exactly.
Yeah.
So, what are you going to do? Well, I'm excited to talk to you because certainly, as I learned even more talking to Scott yesterday, Scott Snyder, you got the heavy hand when it comes to Infinite Frontier. Are you like kind of the de facto event showrunner?
Yeah, for this particular with that and talking about other projects and plans for the next, I would say 2 years, the next 18 months, just really looking at everything and talking about the different books and all the different plans we have sort of for like the big stories going forward. I mean, ever since I came into DC, I've been kind of working on events pretty much the whole time anyway. It's like I started coming in with Rebirth stuff, and then I was doing Justice League for Suicide Squad. Dude, it was crazy. For a minute there, it was like the moment one event ended, I was in the office when another one would start. So it was like, while we're planning the end of Justice League versus Suicide Squad, we had a summit to plan out the lead into Metal. And then it was like, when we're planning the lead in the end of Metal, we're there doing stuff for No Justice. It was like this progression always of like trying to figure this stuff out. So pretty much the last 5 years, I've worked on all the events anyway. So it makes sense for me, after having so much experience with events and some of these big stories, to keep some of this stuff running forward. But it's a lot of fun. I don't know, it's cool. I like working on this kind of stuff. I like working on the big DC stories.
No, that's been great, man. And again, your contributions have shown. We were briefly talking before we started about your death metal Flash one shot, the Speed Force story.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun with that one. That was one where I don't know. It's weird when you kind of just feel it. You just know a book really well. And what's funny about that one is that originally I wasn't going to write it. James was going to write it. He was going to do that one because the way the schedule was looking, I thought I was going to finish Flash long before that issue came out. And I was like, when I finish Flash, I just want to finish here and then, throw my hands up and walk away and be like, I did it. I'm done. It's going to be 100 issues. I'm done. And then we started having more and more conversations about Wally West and where Wally West was going and what he was doing. And I was like, wait a minute. So he's going to be in that book? and we're gonna do a whole thing about him. And at that point, it was nothing. We had no idea what speed metal was. It was just, oh, it's gonna be Wally and the Flash family together. And I did the math and I figured out when it was coming out, and I was like, all right, I have to do it. Like, I have to do that one, and so I wrote it up, and it's one of my like favorite issues of something I've done at DC, and Eddie Burrows really killed on it. It was awesome. I don't know, I'm really proud of that one. It was a cool way of like ending both stories at the same time, because I was ending Barry's story in the Flash book, as far as I was concerned, like as far as I was with it. And I say that even though like since then I've written Barry like multiple times since then. Same thing with Wally, because I wrote them in Last Stories and then War, and then now Infinite Frontier in the Zero issue. I'm writing a scene with the two of them together.
Great.
Yeah, but at the time I thought that was it. I was like, okay, cool, I'm done. Here's my Barry story, here's my Wally story. If I never write the Flash again, this is totally cool. But then what will happen is I'm in these summits where we have these conversations about where these characters are going, and I'll be like, oh, it'd be really cool if this scene happened with the Flashes. And then I sort of like, okay, I'll write that one. But I think I'm done now.
All right, fair enough.
I'm close to being done now.
Good to hear. Now we got a lot of questions immediately,
oh, boy, all right.
And and I will go over the rundown for the issue of Frontier. So in fact, let's do that right now. Actually, while we're thinking about it. So you wrote the framing sequence. You, James, and Scott.
Yeah. We had when we were talking about things last year, we just started talking about different ideas we had and some different stuff we wanted to do. We talked editorial about it, and we came up with this framework for the story that actually leads into a lot of other stuff we want to do in the DCU.
Cool. And John Timms and Alex Sinclair coloring, very cool.
Yeah.
And then
John did a really cool job on that.
Excellent. And then you also have your Flash story that Howard Porter drew.
Yeah.
And also the epilogue, which is Ramita Jr. and Klaus Janson and Brad Anderson coloring.
Was super cool. I also did a story with Alex Mayleave, and it was interesting. I was in the middle of doing like a Daredevil reread. I was rereading Daredevil pretty much like all of it just for fun for myself.
Yes.
And I was in the middle of doing the Mayleave stuff. Like I was in the middle of like Bendis Mayleave. And then they were like, oh, we think Alex Mayleave can do one of these shorts. And I was like, oh, that one. I'm doing one of them, and it's a Black Canary Green Arrow short.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, Alex Mayleave on that one, please. I was middle of it. But with John, so John Romita Jr., he does the epilogue, and I gave him the script, and I realized something that, and this gets a little bit of spoilers, but the characters that are in the ending, he had never drawn before.
Wow.
And there's a trick to it. He kind of has.
Okay.
He sort of has.
All right.
Like, he drew them. This is going to sound crazy, and it's going to kind of give it away. He drew them in an Amalgam comic.
Oh, funny.
Technically, he's never drawn them.
Okay, so that's hilarious.
So I sent the script in, and I know John likes work plot first, and I remember years ago reading the scripts that Scott was sending him for All-Star Batman. So I remember reading those and being like, okay, I know what John likes. And I've talked to him a few times like at summits and just, like conversations at conventions.
He's the best.
So I know the kind of scripts he looks for. And so I wrote it for him. And he called me to talk about the script, had some ideas for it. He's had some thoughts. He wanted to talk it through. And it was pretty awesome. But like, I think that the call was slotted for a certain amount of time because like editors were on the call too. So it was like, we're going to have this block of time to talk about this ending. To make sure John has all the information he needs to do this ending. And we're going back and forth. And it went real quick. It was just like, we talked it out. He was like, I got it. And he's like, cool. And I was just like, all right, cool. Can we just talk about Daredevil Man Without Fear for a little bit? Like, just literally on the phone with him was like, I know this is a call to talk about the epilogue, but I love Daredevil Man Without Fear. And I had just read it again. Again, I did this big Daredevil reread. So I was like, all right, cool. Can we just talk about that for a little bit? And we went in this whole thing about Frank Miller and how he wrote it for him and how it turned from this small project into this mini series. It wasn't originally intended to be a mini series. But yeah, it was great. I'm at this point now in my career where if I'm talking to somebody who there's work I really respected from years before. Years ago, if I had met somebody like an artist who I really looked up to or a writer I really looked up to, I would have been quiet about it. I wouldn't have said anything or asked questions.
Sure.
Now I do not care. Like there was one time Bendis and I were texting about something, and I just straight up just started asking him questions about Secret Invasion because I had read it again. If you can't tell, I have the Marvel Unlimited app, and I read a lot of older Marvel books lately.
I do the same thing. That's all right.
Dude, it's great. And so I texted him like, I have questions about Secret Invasion, and they're all like nerdy questions. They're just, you know, there's a little bit of strategic planning questions too, when you're talking about events, you know, and how you coordinate events that are really big and plan out over time. So I was texting him stuff about that. But yeah, with John, it was cool talking to him on the phone about this ending. But then after we got done, we figured it out. I was like, all right, cool, let's talk about Daredevil for a little bit.
Sure.
I just want to talk about Man Without Fear. That book is awesome. Yeah, I was cool with him. But yeah, we can keep going. Talk about more Infinite Frontier stuff.
All good, man. No, and really, Johnny's the best, and I'm glad that you know. I hope you get more opportunities to work with him and stuff. That's and Maliva, you know. So Bendis is doing
bucket list. That was
excellent.
A bucket list thing.
It doesn't surprise me at all. Of course. So Justice League is Bendis and Dave Marquez.
Yeah.
And let's see, a Batman story that James has done with Jorge Jimenez.
Yeah, that one's real good. James, he wrote that early on. I think it was one of the earliest ones. Actually, no, the first one that got done, the first script that came in was Jeff's Stargirl script. That was the very first one that came in, like
makes sense.
Right at the beginning. It was still, I was in the process of still finalizing my scripts, but he wrote his first. But James is funny because like James and I know each other really well. So with him, you know, we talk all day. Like I don't, you know, we chat, we talk on the phone, and so with his scripts, like today I was reading. What did I read from his today? I read Joker #2 today, which was really good. I told him I hope he took this as a compliment that I thought issue 2 of Joker was better than issue 1. But I read the script for it for Infinite Frontier, and I thought it was really good. And then, you know, Jorge Jimenez comes in and like completely blows out of the water. It's just amazing pages coming through on this thing, and really takes all this stuff and makes it, you know, really ramps it up and makes it really dynamic. And when those pages were coming in, I was like, oh man, this is really beautiful. This is really like an energized Batman story.
Very cool, man. No, and we're going to talk also. You got Robin coming up, and I know you're taking over. You're taking over Detective, right?
No, Mariko's taking over Detective.
Oh, excuse me.
No, that's okay. No, she's doing a great job. She did the Dark Detective stuff. It's still her and Dan Mora. They're continuing, and the stuff they have planned. We did a bat call with all the writers for the entire back group last week. We do them about once a month, and everyone just talks about what they have planned. And Mariko's pitch for Detective, I don't want to say what it is because I don't think she said it publicly yet. But her pitch for Detective is awesome. It was one of those things you're like listening, and then she starts to get into it, and you're like, "Oh, I'm definitely paying attention now." Like it was really good. That book's gonna be really cool. And also, it's got Dan Mora drawing it, so it's gonna be great.
Outstanding. Here, I'm looking. I want to get back to that email. So Clark sent me the whole list here. You know, I'm really excited to see James come back to Alan Scott Green Lantern. We talked about that for the 80th anniversary issue, and it was funny because literally, I love the story, and you know, and I've said this before, and I always want to own up to this. When in Earth 2, when they made Alan Scott a gay character, I'll be honest, I'm like, oh man, like I would have been fine if they had introduced a new gay Green Lantern. Why are they making Alan Scott gay? But then I was thinking about it, and the more I thought about it, and I talked about it with James, this is a really great opportunity to tell the story of what it was like to be a gay superhero in the 40s, and maybe and it sounded like James is going to explore that, and really to have to live even more than your usual superhero double life, and now it's a double life on 2 different levels. And I think that's amazing. And it's more than due as far as, I mean, you know, and I don't want to spoil, but there's a very famous, here, I'll let everybody read between the lines like you with Ramita and Amalgam and stuff. There's a great novel that's based in the comic book era that explores, sexuality back during the Golden Age and stuff. And there's that, but I can't think of a character. And this is a really great opportunity to tell that story. And really present Alan Scott in a different light. And I think it's really neat.
Yeah, and I'm glad that James is continuing to carry that story forward. He did that story in the 80th, And we talked a lot about it then when he was working on it, and then when he started developing this one, we had, because it's part of a larger story we want to tell with Alan Scott and his family with Obsidian and
Sure.
Jade. So we started talking about it. I can't remember how long ago. That was probably November as well, when that particular story got written. He and I talked about it a bit. And with this particular one, again, not getting too much into spoilers, it's actually told from the point of view of his son, Obsidian, right, who's also a queer man. So there's something to like that point of view on his father and knowing what he knows, and I think James really really nails it. It's a very I think it's a powerful scene in the stuff he wrote in this particular issue, and it's drawn by Stephen Byrne, who ended up nailing it, just perfect. We had a lot of conversation on how we wanted to draw it because it was also a scene that we felt needed to have kind of emotional gravity to it. And we talked about a bunch of different people, and then early on, Stephen Byrne came up. We weren't sure who's going to be available, and then he was, and he did it, and it looks terrific. I'm really, that's one of those stories I'm really excited for people to see the whole book. Once it all comes together and you can see it all together, it's really, really cool. But yeah, that part there in particular with Alan Scott, I think people will be really moved by that particular chapter.
Like I said, no, and again, I'm glad you mentioned it because that's another level, the relationship with Jade and Obsidian, and and again, yeah, I mean it's again these already he had his complications with Jade and Obsidian being an absent father and everything, and now even more so. So I think it's rife with story possibilities, and I'm really glad that this angle is being explored. Why am I having such trouble? Here it is. All right, back. Let's see here. Teen Titans Academy. That sounds cool. Tim Sheridan.
Yes. Tim Sheridan and Rafael Sandoval, who I also work with on Flash. I miss working with that guy. He's really, really talented. And I think the plans that Tim has for the book, and I said this on another podcast a couple days ago, there's a plan for that book that hasn't been talked about it all yet. And I don't want to ruin Tim's plans, but really early on they pitched me what that book was. I was on a call with one of the editors of the book, and we were just talking about plans for other books I'm not writing, just having conversations about.
Sure.
And Titans Academy came up, and they were pitching me Titans Academy plus something else, another book that's going to tie into it. So again, I don't want to ruin. It hasn't been announced yet. So another book that's going to tie into it. And we were talking, and they pitched me this whole part of the story, and I was like, that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard. It was one of those things I'm like, that's one of the coolest ideas I've heard that someone has pitched me that I'm like, that was always there this entire time. It's a story point that I think has been in our, this whole time, and it's going to play a really big part of that Titans Academy book. I think that Titans Academy book, everyone is kind of looking at the Red X stuff. Red X, obviously, it's when I wanted to use Red X. I missed my chance. I wanted to use Red X in Robin, and when I realized I could maybe do it, by the time I asked, they were like, we already have plans for them in Teen Titans Academy. So I was definitely I was bummed out about it. But I think everyone's kind of focused on the Red X part of it, the Red X mystery of it. But there's so much more to that book, and there's there's other things going on in it that are going to be really really exciting.
Outstanding, man. No, and now Philip is doing Superman, and you got Becky Cloonan doing Wonder Woman, and you got Joelle doing Wonder Girl.
Yep. Yeah, so all that stuff looks great. Philip's story is really cool. I sent him, or Jamie, the editor, he sent him the scripts for my stories early on, and so he was actually, I think, the first creator to read all of it. A lot of times we would send them bits and pieces of what they needed to know. They didn't get everything. They didn't get the epilogue. But he got everything, and it was really exciting talking to him about some of the plans we had, some of the big moments really early on, and his story is awesome. Him and Jamal Igle did their story, and it looks awesome. It's one of my favorites in the book.
Outstanding, very, very cool. I'm looking at the chat as well. Kyle Fegley, what does Kyle have to say? Speaking of James Robinson and his work, Josh, you should really do a less action, more character book on a C-lister like Starman.
Hello, Kyle.
Hello, Kyle. I love Kyle.
I know, me too. Yeah,
I miss him on the con. I mean, again, we're all stuck inside. I'm sure I would have seen Kyle 3 or 4 times by now. I
know. I love Kyle. Kyle's good people. I was going to tell a joke just now that was a story with me and Kyle from years ago, but maybe I shouldn't tell it. Anyway, no, he's a good dude. He's great. I miss, like, that's one of the things I miss about cons, is seeing all these people we get along with, we hang out with and talk and tell jokes and joke around about comic books with each other.
I hear you, man. Yeah.
You know what is funny? I asked about Starman, actually. I think, like,
which one would you want to do?
Oh,
because am I right
it's complicated.
Am I wrong? I meant to here. I had it for the lobby card for this talk, but I'm going to bring up the image of the Infinite Frontier double. The cover spread and everything. And is that Will Patton that's in that? Isn't there a Will Patton representation in that? Or is it Prince?
Which character are you thinking of?
Well, I was thinking of a Starman, but maybe there isn't a Starman in that. I know Stargirl is in that picture.
I wanted to do a story about. I had asked about this like 5 years ago. I wanted to do a story about David.
Awesome!
I wanted to do some
David Knight.
Yeah, I wanted to do a story about David because there's like these holes in his career.
Sure.
And that was kind of it. But at the same time, I think the James Robinson stuff is so treasured, right? It's so held up as it's this thing that it would be crazy. It would be crazy. And that's where I was in that moment when I was talking to him about it. I was like, we were talking about what would you do if you're going to do something crazy. I am working on a project right now for DC that is much more character based, and it hasn't been announced yet. It's really intense. It's like probably one of the harder things I've ever had to write because it's about it's a lot more of a more, how do I put this? I'm trying not to give away what it is. It's a more emotional story starring characters that I love, but showing them a different kind of light, and definitely a much quieter, more emotional story. It still has action in it. Like, there's still stuff going on that's bigger, but it's much more of a character focused book. I definitely have a few things. One of the goals I had when I was wrapping up Flash, I was only thinking about Flash, right? Like the end of last year, I don't think you and I have talked about this, but I really wasn't working on 5G. I was mostly working on, I was working on Flash. I was working on Death Metal. I really didn't have my hands into 5G stuff very much. We were talking about stuff, but I really didn't, like, that wasn't a focus for me at all. And they'd pitched me a couple things, and I had gone back and forth with them on some stuff. We never really landed on anything. And when I was working on Flash, I was really just so focused on that. And it was, because Flash was a double ship book. It was coming out every 2 weeks, and it was doing that for 5 years.
Yeah.
So I didn't have time to think about other stuff. Like, I get not jealous. Jealous is the wrong word, but I think about how I wish I could have done a few more books on the side at times. Because Flash was double ship, when you think back to like Jeff, Jeff would be doing. I might have my timeline wrong, but he would be doing like Green Lantern and Booster Gold. He'd be doing Flash and Hawkman. I didn't really do a lot of that because Flash was double ship. That took up, a lot of my life was Flash. And then you put in all the events that I was working on at the same time. I wasn't able to really grab like another character. And I had talked about a couple different things, but it just never worked out, mostly because of scheduling. So the reason why I talk about this is the week that Flash ended, I looked around and was like, what's next? Like, what am I doing next? And we had a bunch of different conversations about different characters and different kinds of books, but I was like, and I've talked about this before, it's like, I have to feel obsessed with something. Like, I have to really want that book. I have to really feel that story. And so I went, talked to DC, to some editorial. I talked to Marie Javins, asked her advice on this. And they all kind of said the same thing of like, I had to do something that was unexpected, but also very different from Flash. I couldn't do a book that was tonally the same as Flash, which I agreed with. Like, I gotten Flash out of my system. Like, that kind of book, that kind of superhero book, I kind of got out of my system. And so I had to do something very different. And so I think all the books that I'm doing right now, I'm in the middle of doing like 5 different projects for DC. And then also working with them on like co-writing other books and working with people on some of the event stuff that's coming and different plans for the next year. But I think everything will kind of surprise people. Some of it's going to feel obvious once you hear about it. You're like, oh, that makes sense. But I really did look at what I'd been doing at DC and was like, I can't just repeat that. And so I started looking at different characters, different kinds of books, doing different things very different. Like, Robin is a very different book from from Flash.
Sure.
Even the stuff that we're planning with some of the event stuff, they're going to be very different because I didn't want them to just be sequels or copies of like Death Metal and Metal. Death Metal and Metal, I mean, Scott's so good at that. He's so good at creating these giant like operas, these cosmic DC operas. And I didn't want to just keep doing that. And I also didn't want to be an imitation of Scott. So a lot of the stuff I'm doing when it comes to the events, when it comes to some of these books, when it comes to this book I'm talking about that I don't want to accidentally say what it is, all of this stuff are all things that I think will surprise people and be very different from Flash. It's part of the thing that's really exciting right now is doing stuff that's super different from everything else I've been doing the last 5 years.
That's great to hear. Absolutely, man. Now, let's see here. Shinsui Salty 3.0. When making such big status quo changes, such as adding people or changing mantles, even in an organic way, how long does DC commit to these changes in advance, like John Kent Superman or the next Batman, etc.? I mean, yeah, it's, I guess, a fair question. I mean, we're entering a new status quo, and obviously you say, more events are coming. How long do you think this current, Infinite Frontier idea will last?
I'll be really honest. I mean, it depends on sales. It depends on response. It depends on
Sure.
us. Depends how we're feeling it.
Sure.
I don't think you should stick to something. Oh, it's like any story. This is how I feel about it, right? If you're writing a story, and a lot of times we're working on the story of the DC universe, but when you really boil it down and you're building this story you want to tell, if the characters take you in a different direction, you can't force it. You can't sit there and say, I'm just going to keep heading in this direction no matter what. And I think we've seen over the years where that kind of attitude can at least about stories, at least about stuff that nobody wants. And so I think definitely it's just going to depend on a lot of things, depend on the story, depend on, what the overlords say, depends what editorial says, what sales, response. There's no one clear cut thing. Now, when it comes to committing for a length, I don't know. I guess it depends on how much you can tell that story, right? It's like, can you justify that story? When I was on Flash, part of the reason why I was on Flash for so long was because I was able to continuously pitch new stories for the book. Like, I was able to say, here are ideas for it. And even when it came to bringing characters back, so it's like when it came to bringing Bart, Impulse back, when it came to bringing back Max Mercury and Jesse Quick and Jake Garrick, I had to pitch those stories. Like, I had to come up with reasons for them to be there. I couldn't. And I think one of the things that came up a lot over the years, and I think about this even now when we bring characters back from the dead or when we do some of these projects. Oh, I see. Hello, Josh.
Josh Fialkov saying hello to Josh Williamson. Very nice.
I was just talking about you, Josh Fialkov, yesterday. I owe you a call. But see, he totally distracted me. Totally lost my.
I know. I'm so sorry, buddy. I apologize. Go on.
When we're working on these characters, you have to kind of the length of how much you commit to it. I mean, it depends on you. It depends on the story you want to tell.
Well, and also, I want to hear your answer to this. I asked Scott this question last night. How would you describe the omniverse as opposed to the multiverse? What's the difference here?
I mean, the multiverse is essentially what Grant built, right? To me, like, that's multiversity. Okay. It's 52 worlds. It's this thing. Hold on, I got it. All right, so where's this thing? Yeah, I might have taken it down because I was reading it for something else. Now I'm embarrassed. I had multiversity right here. I was looking.
Oh, that's funny.
But so, all right, so in multiversity, I have it all. These are all my DC books over here. All right, so Grant built the map, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Grant actually designed that. I'm blanking on who actually designed it. But so you have the map,
right?
And that is the multiverse as the DC heroes know it, right? But there are many worlds outside of that map, and that is what the heroes are learning, and that's what we're talking about. Is there are more and more worlds outside that map that are growing. And there's actually multiverses within multiverses. And so this is my theory on this. And somebody else might completely think I'm wrong on some of this stuff.
No,
I want your...
Yeah.
For example, you look at the TV shows, right? The CW shows, they have their multiverse. That is their multiverse. That is a multiverse that exists outside of the normal comic multiverse. But that is part of the DC omniverse. That is part of this giant DC thing. You could say all these different pieces, and all the imaginary tales, every story you ever loved, they all counted in some form. They all happened somewhere inside this
omniverse. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, and then obviously that explains the philosophy of the competing Batman ideas we're going to get in film and TV and the like.
Yeah.
So
it's
that
all
makes
part
sense.
of this giant omniverse.
Okay. Okay.
Scott could probably go much deeper into that one. I mean, we've talked about it at different times, but it's definitely more his area of expertise than mine. I love all the multiverse stuff, and I think some of these ideas we're talking about are really cool. But Scott definitely is more giant, big cosmic ideas than I am about that stuff.
Here, Alex Davis, you wrote both Barry and Wally really well. I agree. How did you approach? How did you approach the? Is that decisiveness
the fans
between
being angry about both?
Yeah, both characters. I can imagine some of the comments you received about Barry versus Wally. Sure, that's a big contention with a lot of people in terms of again, I like them both.
I like them both. Well, it's weird, right? So you have to. This is a strange thing to get into because it's like, I was definitely a Wally person and definitely a person who, that was my guy. I was definitely really into Bart Allen because I was that age, right? So when
I get it, absolutely.
But I was definitely like a Wally person, and it's funny when the Flash show got announced. There's a tweet, so I have a tweet that no one ever found. No one ever looked for this. When the Flash show got announced, I literally did a tweet that was like Wally West for life, like the day that it got announced.
Outstanding, hilarious.
Oh, it's still there.
Funny.
I was definitely very much like a Wally person, and
okay, yeah,
but like my understanding of Barry and my thoughts of Barry as a character all come after his death, right? Like my understanding of Barry is the pedestal he was put on by not only the characters in the books, but by creators, by people of like the hero who died, right? The hero who sacrificed himself, one of the biggest superheroes whose death stuck, and how he represents this idea of the passing of the torch. Like he's that marker, right? Like a lot of times these characters weren't that's when DC changed from being this kind of superheroes now being about legacy and generation, right? Is really there, right. I think.
You're
at least for the modern age.
Right.
And so that's really where a lot of my head is with those characters. So you have to imagine that when it became only Barry, like I love the Flash, and so I kept reading the Flash book, but my relationship with him changed. Now, once you start writing that character, like there is no character on the planet I've written more than I've written Barry Allen. There's no character I have more connected in my head. I have a distinct relationship with that character more than anybody. And so my relationship with him is very different. It's personal, right? It's like with Wally as a character, I've only been able to write maybe a handful of times. Every time I did a book with Wally, I really tried to make sure I stuck to what I believe that character was like, my belief of him, and what I wanted that character to be. Now, so I was able to kind of put him on a different kind of pedestal, right? Before I was putting Barry on this pedestal, and now I'm putting Wally on it. When it came to the comments, I respect everybody's passion for these characters. I'm opinionated. I may not always talk about it, but I'm super opinionated about DC books and DC characters, and I have my favorites, and I definitely have thoughts on stories. I don't always share it, and so with Barry and Wally, I respect that passion. I think the only time I ever got a little like, oh man, is I wanted to sometimes tell the Wally fans who are really, really upset. I just wanted to be like, listen, I am on your side. Like, I am trying to get him where you want him. Just, you gotta be patient. I'm trying. And that brings us back to Infinite Frontier Zero. So if you read Infinite Frontier Zero, the scenes that I wrote in that, I think if you're a Wally fan, you'll be happy.
Outstanding. Here now, how's this? Cassius the Bard, I assume. I haven't read DC in a bit. Why should I come back for Infinite Frontier?
I think if you're a DC fan that hasn't read for a while, and you're just kind of looking for something that is definitely like a fun, I don't want to use the word launching pad. I would use the word starting point, but I think all these characters are starting these new chapters in their life, and so you can come and kind of start that new chapter with them. For me, I've been a DC fan for so long, and I don't necessarily think we should always just go backwards. I don't want to say like, oh, if you haven't read DC Comics in 20 years, it's going to be just like it was 20 years ago. So you should read this. I don't want to say that.
No.
But I do want to say that the core of, I think, what people love about DC is still here. And now we're moving it all forward. And there's going to be new stuff. And if you thought you knew everything, you might find these things to be unpredictable enough and exciting enough that you should come back and read.
Very cool. Absolutely. Here, now this is another good one from Shisui Salty. In Infinite Frontier, were there any ideas or concepts when initially pitched that took time to win you over? How do you approach differing opinions within the company on the initiative?
Gosh, anyone that I didn't agree with? Not with the special. I think with the special, we had enough conversations that we knew what it all was and what we're doing. With any of the books that had to win me over, no. I think, it's funny, like the Green Lantern book. The Green Lantern book was actually in development for a long time. And I wasn't skeptical of it. I just didn't know it. But the more and more I heard about it and the more conversations, and I actually heard Jeffrey Thorne talk about it. We did a podcast together a while ago. And it was for a convention. And hearing him talk about the book and seeing how passionate he was and hearing his thoughts on it. And then actually, then that really got me excited about it. And then when I read his story for Infinite Frontier, that's when I really was like, this is going to be a really good book. I can't think of anything else that I was like, no, I don't like that. If there's something, all right, I'm going to be super honest. If DC does something I don't like, I'm fairly honest with them about it. Like I might be snarky about it. I might be even a little passive aggressive about it, but I definitely will talk to people and share my thoughts on it. We've had some conversations, and but at the end of the day, and this is something that is important with this, is like I definitely talk with them about ideas for books and just kind of bounce ideas around. I love going to the writers' rooms we used to have and the summits we would have, and like even now when we do some of these Zoom calls, some of us creators talking. One of the things I don't want to do is that I don't ever want to get in the way of another creator, right? It's like that's their story to tell, and I don't want anybody to get in my way. So it's like, I don't want to be out there trying to tell people what to do and not to do. So when it comes to some of those, if it's an initiative or something that's coming in a book, it's like, I should have faith in those creators. They know what they're doing, because I don't got all the answers. I'm
Sure.
not going to get it right every time. So it's like, why am I going to sit here and tell somebody else that they're wrong? I think that's part of why I love the summits and stuff, is that you get to pitch. Everybody has to pitch their stories, and then we get to sit there and talk about them and see. And you can see how passionate. I respect that a lot. If I can tell someone's really excited about a story, and then I'm kind of annoying and I'll ask the same question whenever somebody pitches me. This is not just a DC thing. This is a comics thing. If somebody ever pitches me their story, I always ask them the exact same thing. I'm always like, "What's the last page? How does it end? Like, what's the thing that you're getting to with this?" What are you trying to say with this character? What's your,
Sure.
The point you want to make? But then also, how does that first issue or that story end? And you can tell when somebody like lights up and they're like pumped, and like, oh, this is what happens. Like that, I respect a lot.
Very cool. There you go. Now, all right, a couple good questions here. Monashe Timusa. Are there more plans on expanding the amount of female lead titles and people of color titles within the line?
I believe so. I don't know every plan. I don't know every book that's coming. I can look at some stuff, but yes, I believe so.
Well, and truly, I think in the last 12 months or so, I mean, look at things like Far Sector, look at things like the new Wonder Girl series that's happening, and Future State Wonder Girl or Wonder Woman.
Well, look at Future State. I feel like Future State is actually a pretty good in terms of the look of the DCU and the creators involved, and I think the way the books look, the energy behind some of them, and how they can be fun in places. I think that's actually a pretty good example of what I think the DCU is going to be like moving forward. Again, like I don't know every book that's coming. I do know a lot. It's tough because I don't want to ruin other people's stuff. Like I said this before already, but there are certain projects coming that I've heard about that will go into what you're asking that I think you'll be excited about. I'm excited about. So my answer is like yes. Just keep looking. There's some really cool stuff going on.
All right, here's an interesting question, and I assume when Reg Robinson asks when will we see Fury again, is that Infinity Incorporated Fury?
That's what I'm wondering too. Like, which character is that? Fury, like
isn't that was the Earth 2
like
Wonder Girl essentially, and she was in Infinity Inc. And yeah, she was Diana's daughter of Earth 2 Wonder Woman.
Hold on. I'm going to look at something real quick, and I'm going to answer
Sure.
that question.
Sure.
Let me just look at, if I can actually look at Infinite Frontier real quick, because I have it here to look at in case I need to. Oh, perfect. I pulled the right spot.
Attaboy.
So there's a Fury cameo in Infinite Frontier. I just looked. There is one. So there you go.
Wow. Cool. That's
There's a small. It's a small thing. It's a very, very small thing. But yeah, she's definitely in there. And it's a small. Again, it's a small thing. But I had to think about that for a second, and I'm like, I know who that character is. I know what they look like, and I went and looked at this.
That's excellent. Is Silver Scarab in there as well? That was Earth 2 Hawkman and Hawkgirl's son.
Yes.
That was Fury's.
Yes.
They're both in there. Interesting. Yeah. That's great. See, now those are two fun Infinity Incorporated characters that are, from the 80s. And I remember them well. And that's good to hear. That's awesome.
Yeah, we talked about Infinity Inc. I don't know when this was. In October, they came up in a couple conversations.
Very cool.
I mean, everything comes up at some point or another. I mean, that's one thing I think is interesting is that, like, we get asked these questions online about, like, where's my favorite character at? And it's like, I promise you, like, every character is talked about at some point or another, like, between editorial. Everyone's trying to find a way to make these things work. It might take some time because you want to make sure the creators are working on the time to make it good and are passionate creators working on it. But it's funny when I see people be like, what about my favorite character? And it's like, I really feel like most of them are in some kind of development or someone's having a conversation about them at some point.
Amelia wants to know why you decided to write Robin and what you think of Talia al Ghul. And also I want to marry that with Cesar de Rome asking if there's anything he should read before reading your Robin.
No. I think it was important to me that somebody could come into Robin and had the information they needed immediately. Like, you get, like, son of Batman, Talia's his mom. He was in the Super Sons. He was a Teen Titans. He had a falling out with Batman. Let's go. Like, those are the beats that were important to me. I'm obsessed with continuity, so I definitely went back and reread everything. Like, we started talking about Robin about a year ago. It came up a couple times, and I wasn't sure it was going to work out. It just came up. Like, it was one of those things of, like, would you ever be interested in this? And I was, yeah, because I really like Damian, and he's a character I've always wanted to write. I got to write him 10 years ago, one of my earliest DC jobs.
Funny.
So ever since then, it was like my second or third, maybe it was a little bit later in. It was my first full issue that they published that was just me. It wasn't part of an anthology or, like little bits and pieces of an issue or something. And so I'd always wanted to write that character again. So when it came up last year, it was one of those things I would do that. Like, I can hear that kid's voice. Like, he's one of those characters I kind of know. And I can hear his voice in my head. And so I was like, if I can do it this way, I would do it. And then we kept talking about it till this last summer. And then it finally started to come together back in, like, August. It was like, okay, I think we're going to really be able to do this. And what do I think of Talia? I think Talia is great. Like, I have a lot of plans for Talia. I think she's an important part of DCU. I think that she's kind of undervalued and hasn't really been used a lot. At least, and I'm not knocking anyone else has been using her, but I definitely think we can do more with her. And I have a lot of plans with her. When we started building, Scott James and I got on the call last year to talk about the end of Death Metal. And, we just started going into different ideas, and we started talking about who was going to be in the totality team, who was going to be those characters in the Death Metal that are going to meet and they're going to talk about this multiverse and this omniverse, who those characters are going to be. And we started building this list of who we thought should be in that room. And my contribution to that was I really felt Talia should be there. Like, she was the one that I was like, I think that's a character that is connected to a lot of pieces of the DCU. And I think that room is supposed to be full of some of the smartest people in the DCU. And I felt like if we're going to have this balance of heroes and villains, I think Talia would be an awesome contribution to that team, that group of people. So that was my contribution to that team at the end of Death Metal, was to have Talia there. So that should tell you what I think about her as a character.
That's cool. And I know, Brian was playing with her in Leviathan, and I don't know when if Leviathan is still on the schedule of eventually coming back. But that was something. And then the comic book master wants to know if we can expect a crossover between your Robin and Tom Taylor's Nightwing.
We're talking again, like I was saying earlier. We have these meetings where we talk about these books. I think that Tom, he has this really cool story he's building. There's a lot of bits and pieces of it. He already showed some art of it that had characters that it was funny. The moment he said he was doing the book and he was going back to Bloodhaven, I asked him about a bunch of characters. I was like, "Are you using this one, this one, this one?" And he was like, "Yes, I'm using all of them." And I want to make sure he has the runway to really tell his story first. And I don't want to get too deep into crossovers too quickly. Robin is kind of off outside of Gotham for a little bit. But him and Nightwing, they're gonna meet fairly soon. I will say that they're gonna meet fairly soon. I'm not sure if we're gonna have like an official crossover between those two books just yet. We've definitely been talking, and there's plans in place, and but I couldn't really give you like a month just yet. But I know in Robin when there's gonna be an issue where Nightwing and Robin are gonna interact.
Cool, that's fantastic. I got to tell you, the one aesthetic thing that I noticed, and especially too going back to your speed metal story, and also the future state Nightwing stuff, and it's so funny because just like with Rebirth, or not Rebirth, New 52, everybody had the V-neck collars, and everyone's like, "What the fuck is that?" And then I was one of those, "What the fuck is that?" And now it's the fact that the masks, the way they connect to the chin. And they almost have this chin strap look. And I'm sorry, I can't help it. I'm an old man. But did I show you when, or I don't know if you're aware of this. There was this
great... It's the future. In the future, everyone wears chin straps. That's just what happened. All right. In the future, we're all going to wear chin straps.
Kenneth, do you know who Kenneth Mars is? Kenneth Mars, great 60s and 70s comedian. He was in Fletch. He's the guy who writes Springtime for Hitler in the original Producers, the Mel Brooks movie.
Okay. Yeah, he watched Producers not long ago.
And he's the police guy with the wooden arm in Young Frankenstein and everything. All right, he had a recurring character on Martin Mull and Fred Willard had this amazing show in the 70s that was a spinoff of Mary Hartman. It was called Fernwood Tonight, and it was like a talk show in this ridiculous little small town. And they always had Kenneth Mars on, and he had some sort of chin supporter. And it was this ridiculous thing that ended in a little golf wiffle ball that would support his chin. And I put up a picture of Future State Nightwing and this picture of Kenneth Mars. And I'm like, I'm sorry, this is where my brain takes me. I don't know where that design came from, but I just think it looks ridiculous. I got to be honest.
In the future, everyone's going to wear chin straps. That's all it is. Gotham's a tough place. It's a tough place. You got to wear chin straps.
All right. When I'm yelling at clouds, I'll also be yelling in the sky, yelling at the chin straps as everybody flies by. What the hell are you wearing that for God's sake? You're covering your dimple. Kirk Douglas would be very upset with you. All right. Let's see what else we got here. This is an interesting comment, and I agree. Talia has a lot of depth to her. Not this mambo-pambo shallow approach of only giving tip of the iceberg info on the character. Okay.
Yeah, I think... with Talia, in the Robin stuff you're going to see at the start, it's definitely going to be, I don't want to say surface. You're going to get a little bit of her perspective on things and her thoughts on Robin.
Sure.
And the direction she wants Robin to go. She has her own mission moving forward. She has things that she wants to do.
Sure.
But I think once we get back around to her on a regular basis, that's one of my goals, is to really spend a lot more time with her and sort of her thoughts on her role in the DCU, because she's more than just Damien's mom. She's more than just Raish's daughter. It's so I want to go more into her and her role and her character. It's gonna take a minute to get there because I have a Robin arc that we're doing first, and then the stuff that's gonna happen in the Robin arc after that, we'll have Talia involved in it, and then Talia's also involved in another book. Kind of as a background player in that book, but she's still in that book, and it kind of will build up. One of the plans I have is to sort of all the books I'm writing are kind of connected in weird ways in places, and they're all building two different narratives that will intersect at some point, but there's two different narratives, and so you'll probably see some of those pieces. And Talia is really important to one of the narratives. She's kind of tied into both, actually, but she's more important to one than the other.
Okay. Everyone is asking for the differences between Infinite Frontier and Rebirth. And okay, there's that. And then also, isn't there another one here? Hold on one second. Yes. Can we expect to see more events similar in scope to Endless Winter, Justice League versus the Suicide Squad compared to Rebirth?
When it comes to those kind of smaller events like Endless Winter and Justice League versus Suicide Squad, yes. I know there's something being planned and talked about right now that isn't kind of in that scope. I personally love that stuff.
Yeah,
I like smaller condensed events. Like I love the big stuff too. Like we had a lot of fun doing death metal and metal.
sure.
But I really like doing shorter stuff. You might see some of that, like events that I'm pitching and things that I'm talking to them about, are all a lot more condensed down. I think we need to move faster. Personally, like I like stuff. I think especially with some of these big events. This is more my personal feelings on this. Is that I think with some of these big events, when they really are these events that can impact the DCU, it's tough to have them go on for 6-7 months. It's hard because you're talking about something people are waiting for it to end because they're like, oh, that's when the next impact's gonna hit. So to me, I really wanted, and this is what I've been talking about for a while, of wanting the events that I was working on to be faster and shorter, and be able to move a little quicker in the DCU with some of these things. And the other question about comparing it to Rebirth, that's really tough because I feel like Rebirth was so huge. I think that a lot of pieces moving forward, like James on Batman, he's carrying forward the story he was telling. I think it's a different beast. And it's hard for me because I'm such a, like, Rebirth is really important to me.
Sure.
It's something that, like, that was me coming into DC again, and doing Flash and working with DC again as doing Rebirth. And I think that Rebirth issue that Jeff wrote is one of the more, like, important DC comics ever.
Right? I agree.
Like,
I completely agree.
Marker. It's such a solid line. I don't really feel like that was our intent with Infinite Frontier. I think our intent with Infinite Frontier was to take all these pieces that we liked that have been coming since Rebirth and just carry that ball forward. Even in the issue, the Zero issue of Infinite Frontier, there are references, things going back to Rebirth. So It was more about kind of not drawing such a hard line in the sand as Rebirth did. I think Rebirth really was like it was a much more of a big bang moment for DC, where I don't really see that with this, partially because I think we had a lot of good stuff going on before. And so it's about just taking some of these ideas that we had that we liked and the parts that we loved. And so much of Rebirth was about getting back a lot of the core, right? Like a lot of what people felt was missing. And I think we've done a lot of work to get some of that stuff back. So now it's about just kind of moving it forward.
Okay. And now, a good question about your future state Justice League from Handsome Cobra. Did you talk with John Ridley about Tim Fox?
I just talked to John Ridley on Friday.
That's hilarious. Very cool.
We did a video with him with all the people working on Bat books, and we just talked. Mostly, we talked about feature plans and stuff like that. But when I was writing the book, when I was writing Justice League Future State, I didn't talk with John Ridley. I talked with editorial, and they gave me all his scripts. I didn't. So this is when I first started writing Justice League Future State. I was told, and this changed. Things change sometimes, that we were not going to reveal who it was. I wasn't. I was not going to reveal who was under the mask at first. We were going to try to keep it a secret a little bit. And so I wrote it that way. And I also didn't want to make it all about Batman because I knew there were going to be other Bat books and there was already going to be Batman. And so he doesn't have that huge a role. He has a role. He definitely has a presence in the book, especially more in the second issue than the first issue. And so with that, it was he was kind of one of the easier characters to write in the book because he didn't have a lot to do. He didn't also have a lot of lines. And so with that, that's why I was only able to I mostly just focused on reading his scripts, getting an idea of what his voice was like, and then went for it. I had to talk to John about that for Future State. But we just talked on Friday about other stuff.
Okay. And then Z Swimmer C wants to know if Dr. Manhattan's influence will be referenced in the future in the sense of Doomsday Clock story of the DC universe. It seems like it was so huge, and then death metal happened. So what about that Manhattan incursion? Is there?
I think that's over. I think in terms of the influence on the DCU itself, I cannot speak for Jeff's story. I'm not going to speak for Jeff with Doomsday Clock. But in terms of Manhattan, the stuff that was going on that we were playing with, and the stuff with Wally, that chapter is over. You know, as far as like what we're doing right now, like that chapter is definitely over. But again, I can't speak for if Jeff has plans for that stuff or ideas that he wants to do following up on Doomsday Clock. I can't talk about that at all. But I can say, as far as Infinite Frontier is concerned, there's a line that Wonder Woman has later in the issue, in the Zero issue, where she talks about that influence is gone. Like he is no longer watching the way he was before, which is a reference when you go back and look at something like, you know, when you go back and look at something like the beginning of Rebirth and the stuff that Wally and Barry were saying then. I try to reference some of that stuff that Wally was talking about in Rebirth with Wonder Woman's speech later.
Okay. I'm bringing up the photo, which is the wraparound cover to Infinite Frontier Zero.
So which character were you asking about? Which character do you think was...
Maybe I probably made a mistake. No, I mean, yeah, because there's Booster. Yeah, I probably did make a mistake, obviously. But I want to know, is there any sort of Zapruder film sort of Easter egg in this cover? And you don't have to reveal, obviously, what it is, but is there something that we should be looking for on this cover that
there is? I would say there's a thematic Easter egg with this cover.
Okay.
You know, we talked with Dan Jurgens as he was developing this. I gathered a lot of reference material for what I was thinking of this cover, and
Dan drew this.
So Dan,
or did he design it?
No. So Dan and I and editorial, we all got on the phone and we talked about what this cover was going to be and some different ideas for it. I gave him a list of characters. It was just, I gave him a list, and then editorial, we all kind of pulled this list together of characters that were going to be in the book, but also characters we wanted to say, like, these are characters that are going to be in the DCU this year, right?
Sure.
That had kind of a focal point in places. And then we started having this conversation with Dan on the phone about some different ideas of what he could do in terms of just theme, right? And all these characters kind of looking forward and looking toward Bright. And we talked about that a bunch. So Dan did this. It was funny. Dan was only supposed to do a rough. He was supposed to do a really simple rough, and then Mikkel was going to finish it.
Okay, sure. Mikkel Janine.
And then Dan did this. He basically penciled it. I mean, he basically did it, right? And
good.
He did it, and they gave it to Mikkel, and then Mikkel was like, "I love it," and then Mikkel essentially like inked it and then colored it.
I see.
And that's where this whole thing came from. So it was an interesting process. It was kind of a cool process for this book. When we got it, because Mikkel is digital, I texted Dan and I was like, "Hey, are you gonna sell that original at all? Are you gonna sell that pencil sketch?" And he wrote me back and he was like, "I don't know yet." Like, he could tell like I was fishing, because I'll do that sometimes. I'll ask artists if they're thinking about selling pages or whatever. Especially if it's something I think is cool like this, or something I'm working on that is I think a special kind of thing that So like with all my Create Your Own books, I own the last page of all the Create Your Own issue ones.
That's outstanding. That's great.
So I always try to get something. With this one, I was trying to get the cover, and that didn't work out, I don't think so.
Well, and honestly, now this makes me want to talk to Dan. Also, and I meant to say, I'm totally blanking. I talked to Andy Schmidt about the story.
Oh, yeah.
He and Dan, and is it Andy Lanning also, or I forget who else?
No, it was Robert Venditti, Dan Jurgens.
Right. Okay. Yes. And I loved the first chapter. I haven't read the second chapter yet, but I loved that story and grouping all those characters from different worlds. And it's a lot of
worked on that. I worked on that for a little bit. I was originally supposed to work on it before, and so I was there in the development of that first issue. It's kind of funny. I was there for part of the conversation before anything was really written. I think Andy had written a little bit. I think everyone had written a little bit, but I didn't have time. Like, I was having these meetings, and everyone was doing their parts, and I was like, I don't have time to read the parts. So I eventually told them I couldn't work on it anymore, and so I got to watch kind of the development of that team and that first issue. And then I got to read the first issue really early, and I was like, man, that's beautiful. They did a really cool job on this book. Like, it's a really fun like time travel story. But yeah, it's really cool. It's a cool book. I'm excited to read the second part. I need to ask for it. Haven't read
Yeah,
it yet.
I'm really curious, especially the way that first issue ended. It's like, all right, who the hell is this? And also, just I mean, I loved as a little kid, the 100-page Justice League Spectaculars would come out, so you'd get great old All-Star Justice Society stories, plus you'd get the crossovers. And I was just fascinated by Earth 2 and the idea of an alternate, Earth and everything. So anytime there's references to things like that, and seeing Clark Kent's Superboy and 1939 Batman in that story, and all the other characters, I mean, and Commandy and everybody else working together. I mean, no, it's outstanding. It's exciting, and it's
a lot
fun.
of fun. Yeah, it's
exactly.
a lot of fun. I think that's a big part of some of these conversations we have, is just trying to make sure that we're having fun, the readers are having fun with some of this stuff. And that book is really cool. They did a really good job putting that one together.
Yeah, Generations Shattered. Thank you, Wesley. I couldn't think of the name of it. Absolutely, I agree. And it is a lot of fun. Now, Amelia asks, and others have asked this as well, will we see John Kent in your Robin story?
There is, I said before, in issue 1, we kind of referenced a little bit of their relationship when they were in Tucson together. I think John Kent's going to be really busy this year. Oh, actually, I'm remembering something now. Yes. So you're going to see them interact fairly soon. Not in Robin, though. Like, Robin, it's going to be some time because Damian is going to be super busy for a bit. Like, the plans we have for the book kind of keep him outside of Gotham for a little bit.
You did say that. Yep.
Well, part of it is I wanted, again, Flash was such a different beast. Like, Flash was so fast, and I have a habit to overplot. And so with Flash, it was like, it worked out with Flash with those double shift, right? So I was able to kind of like break the plots up. Yeah. I kept it moving really, really quickly. Whereas with Robin, I'm pacing it very different. And so I wanted it to breathe a lot more. So for when you get through some of the stories, I want to tell what Damian's going to be a little bit, but I do want to write them together. I think they have a really interesting dynamic, and I think that relationship is really interesting. So I want to write them together.
Okay, that sounds cool. And then people want to know if Tim Drake, will we see more of him in Infinite Frontier? Maybe in a different role, since Damian is Robin again. Perhaps
I know there's plans. I know there are plans for him. I don't want to spoil someone else's story, but I know there are plans. Excellent. Like, listen, this is about Tim Drake. Is that like Tim Drake is James Tynion's favorite character?
That's good to hear.
It is his favorite character. I might speak out of turn. Maybe James will correct me, but I'm fairly certain it's his favorite character. You could tell by the work he did when he was doing Detective.
Sure.
Right.
Yes.
And you have to understand, as long as James is working on Batman and helping steer the Batman ship, there's going to be plans for Tim. Like, there's definitely stuff that's coming. He has a really small cameo in Robin #1, but there's definitely plans for Tim. Like, he comes up. I mean, he's a character I love too. Like, I'm a big Young Justice fan. It's like all those characters that were the sidekicks coming in the late '80s, early '90s. Those are all characters I really like. They were part of my POV into the DCU. It's like when they were being introduced, and I was kind of being introduced to it at the same time. So I have a soft spot for them all as well. And so if you're a Tim fan, just know that like they're in the conversation and there are plans for them.
Fair enough. Oh, here's another corner that people want to know about. How is the Milestone relaunch doing? I don't see anything after they announced in DC fandom.
I can't really speak to Milestone at all. That's definitely something you'd have to talk with DC or talk with Jim Lee about.
Okay.
I can say I'm a huge fan of Milestone. Like, I was reading those books when they were coming out. My favorite was Blood Syndicate. I'm glad that a lot of this stuff is available now. It hasn't been available in a really long time. Blood Syndicate, actually, I don't know why it isn't available right now. But, that Hardware is... I think Hardware is actually probably my favorite. That opening scene of Hardware with the bird stuck with me forever. Like, to this day, is I think one of the best openings in issue 1 is him watching that bird at the beginning and sort of his inner monologue at the beginning of Hardware #1.
Okay, and somebody from Periscope wants to know Ibriz Marcus.
Flatline.
Yeah,
Flatline is cool. It's a new supporting character. Their first appearance is going to be Robin #1. It's Lord Deathman's sidekick. She has a very massive impact on the Robin book. When I created them, I had this idea for what they were going to be, and I wrote up this list of characters that were going to be in the book, some of which are characters that already appeared, some characters I wanted to do something different with, and then some were new characters I wanted to introduce for the Robin book. And I sent this whole list over to Gleb, and then that was the first one he drew. Flatline, and they just came back with this really, really cool design that just like nailed it. And it was one of those things where once the design came in, all of a sudden I could hear the character. I could hear the character talk. I knew their personality. Like Gleb gave them so much character in the art. Just immediately, I felt like I knew that character. And then they started really more to take on a life of their own. And then they became a bigger part of the book. I mean, they already were a big part of the book, but then they started to become a bigger piece. Because also like Ravager's in the book. There's a couple other new characters. There's a couple surprise characters that are going to be in Robin. But Flatline started taking on this like kind of bigger role, just because I once I saw that design, I was like, oh, I understand this character now, and so I was able to write them more and more.
Very cool, man. People were asking about what the Fourth World's impact was going to be on any Fourth World characters, like the New Gods, for example. If there's going to be any, and obviously, I don't even know. We were just talking about Tom off the air and stuff. I don't even know where the status of the film is. Certainly during the production problems of COVID and everything. But
I was working on it. Like I can say,
oh sure,
that. I'm sure Tom would tell you the same thing. He's working on it. With Fourth World characters, there's the Miracle book, right? And
right. That's right. It's Religions, yeah.
Yeah, without getting too much into spoilers, there's definitely stuff coming with Fourth World coming in the books. There's definitely plans for those characters, and they get impacted in a really major way in Infinite Frontier Zero.
Are you doing any Black Label stuff? You don't have to specify, but will we see any Black Label stuff?
Well, we were talking about that book before that I'm working on that I'm not allowed to talk about. That hasn't been announced yet.
Okay, no problem. All good, man. No. I don't want to tip anything. That's cool.
The only reason why I would ever not want to talk about this stuff is I wouldn't want to upset the other people I'm working on it with.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's I don't own these books by myself. I have artists and editors. We're all a team together, and I don't want to mess up their game too.
Yeah, and seriously, man, I'm not about screwing up a marketing plan. So
for sure.
So that's and a lot of people are predicting that you might be working on a Plastic Man story. So we'll leave that. Dude,
that's so funny. There. Plastic Man came up. I started thinking about Plastic Man a few months ago because I was thinking about what are characters that I like that I think would be fun to work on, and Plastic Man was one of them. I'm not working on a Plastic Man thing, but I know other creators that want to work on Plastic Man. But Plastic Man's such a cool character that oddly has I don't know how to word this. Mass appeal. People know who Plastic Man is, right? It isn't just us, comic book nerds. People know who Plastic Man is. And so I was looking at characters like that. I was looking at characters that have kind of an audience outside of our little bubble. And I was like, people know Plastic Man. But I think my favorite Plastic Man is probably Kyle Baker. Right?
It was a great run. Absolutely, man. I love that run.
So funny.
I loved Wade's and really the people that were writing Justice League at the time.
Yeah,
I really liked their take on him. Well, and also, I mean, God, Bendis and I have talked about, and this was even when he was still in Marvel, and he was just, I got so many ideas for Plastic Man, and I'm like, yeah, that'd be great, man. And I
didn't know that. I definitely want to see that now. I want to see Bendis see Plastic.
You gotta ask him about that, man. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, and also during COVID, do you guys even try from a socially distant standpoint, all the Portland people, to wave at each other across the room or something?
No, I haven't seen Bendis in over a year easily
wow.
Over a year. No, I have not seen. I have to think about this for a minute. We went to Chicago, right? We went to C2E2.
C2E2, yeah, that's last time I saw you. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that was the last con. I feel like there was some after that, but that was the last time I saw.
That was the last big con, sure.
That was the last time I saw a lot of people. I saw an editor, in person, in front of my house on the street. We stood in the street, and he was easily 10 feet away from me, both masks on. That was the first time I'd seen another person I work with in comics, and almost a year.
Jesus. Oh yeah, here we go. And
Wow.
I agree. Gail Simone's Plastic Man was creepy. I'll give you that. Absolutely, that's funny.
Yeah, but Gail's great though. Gail is awesome. I feel like Gail is one of the ambassadors of comics.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah,
No, she's
for sure.
She's hilarious. Absolutely. Here's a good one because I found his appearances in Death Metal interesting, and I should have asked Scott this yesterday. But does DC have any plans for Roy Harper? Poor Roy.
The answer I can give is just to read Infinite Frontier Zero. Like that is the answer to that.
Okay, that's fine. There you go.
I like Roy. I mean, he. There's reasons he was in the end of Death Metal. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Derek wants to know how you feel about Golden Age heroes and who is your favorite.
Oh, that's hard. I feel like the obvious answer is Jay.
Jay has always been my favorite Golden Age hero.
Jay has such a funny origin to me, because he passes out in the lab and gets superpowers from it.
Yep.
I remember as a kid, I was like, "What?" Like,
Jay was basically huffing and OD'd and woke up with speed.
Hold on. Where is that at? All right, right here. Hold on. Okay, so I have this, right? I have the this is one of my earliest introductions to comics, right?
Hold on, stand by. Hold on. Jules Pfeiffer, yes, indeed. Yes.
Yeah. So, the great comic book heroes.
Absolutely.
This is one of my earliest things. And in here, it has all these. This was really one of the first things I think I read as a kid was this book. It was my parents.
Sure.
And in here, it had all these Golden Age origins. What's crazy about this book is it doesn't just have DC stuff, right? It has Marvel. It
Quality.
even has
Plastic Man's in there.
What's one?
Plastic Man is in there.
Plastic Man here, but also is the Spirit is in here.
Spirit is in there. Absolutely, it's a great
book.
One
of my introductions, and we were talking about Plastic Man. Yeah, Plastic Man is in here. A lot of my early introductions to the Golden Age were through this.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, Alan Scott's also someone I really like.
I love Alan Scott.
I guess I will say Jay. I used to give one of my editors a hard time because here's what I'm gonna get in trouble. I was just gonna say this. Jay is 100% smoking when he gets his powers.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, he's totally smoking when he gets his powers. He just decided to kick back for
right. Time to light up a lucky in the middle of the experiment. Absolutely, man.
Because he was wore out from playing football. So that's really what happened. He was wore out from playing football and decided to smoke a cigarette. Next thing you know, he got superpowers. I'll say Jay. I guess I'll say Jay. I got to write Jay, in Flash stuff, and I was really happy about that.
Yeah.
I would say Jay. I'm a big. I like the JSA a lot. I think JSA are really great characters. I remember even in the build-up to JSA coming back as a title at the end of the 90s, they were constantly releasing these one-shots and minis, or even Golden Age. Golden Age is great. Golden Age is the book Golden Age, the James Robinson book Golden Age is a great book.
Sure. I love that book. It's
fantastic. I'll say Jay. Yeah.
No, and it's funny mentioning the Golden Age book. I also like on a second tier. I really love Johnny Quick, and I love the way James positioned Johnny Quick in the Golden Age, and also the way that Tarantula's life.
I was going to say Tarantula too. Yep. Yeah.
Because I loved him in All Star Squadron, and I kind of like that his life didn't turn out the way he expected, and it was kind of a mixed bag at the end. I thought that was kind of intriguing. Now, Magic K has asked this a couple times, and this might be a question for James rather than you, or it might be something that's being answered in an Infinite Frontier. But he wants to know, or she, I'm not sure. Actually, let's say they, because I don't know the gender here. What sexuality is Alan Scott? How does he identify himself? Gay or bisexual?
In Infinite Frontier Zero, he says gay.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, in Infinite Frontier Zero, he says gay.
Okay. Because again, he had obviously his original wife. He had his relationship too with Molly, the Harlequin, his Catwoman, if you will, in terms of a hero nemesis kind of relationship and everything.
Yeah,
and
I think if somebody is really interested in that stuff, the answer is to read what James wrote. I think what James wrote is really poignant and is really powerful, and it's not only through Obsidian talking about his dad, but it's also Alan talks about it himself, and he talks about what we're talking about. I think James really made a point to answer those questions in the story. So yeah, if you're really interested in that stuff, you should definitely read Infinite Frontier Zero.
Absolutely, man. No, now this I do know the answer, and this, or rather, here, hold on a second. There we go. Erebes Marcus says, "Do we explore the event that led to the Magistrates' takeover of Gotham?" I believe James has said that on this very program, that eventually the events of Future State and the current status quo of Batman will kind of collide.
Yeah,
So,
you'll definitely see what leads to it. And actually, that is, again, Infinite Frontier Zero. You see sort of the thing that was the tipping point. I mean, Joker War is sort of the beginning of that story. The events of Joker kind of lead into Infinite Frontier Zero. And then once you get to Infinite Frontier Zero, you'll see how this domino effect that will lead to the Magistrate continues there.
Excellent. And someone wants to know if we will see any reimaginings of Origins in Infinite Frontier, sort of like the Zero Year in Batman.
The only one I can speak to about that a little bit is like Crime Syndicate. Crime Syndicate gets kind of a restart, it gets kind of it's a little bit of an origin of the Crime Syndicate in that Crime Syndicate book.
Talk to Andy Schmidt about that book.
Yeah.
Andy and I talk about that.
I have seen so far. There's been a couple conversations about that. There is a book I'm working on where I did debate if I wanted to not revamp, just explore a character's origin in a new light. And then I just decided I wasn't interested. I wanted to just move things forward. I wanted to kind of just take the stuff that I liked that was working, because it was already working. So I'm like, why am I going to re-show it? I had already done that with Flash. I did Flash Year One. So I'm like, I'm not really interested in doing some of that stuff. I just wanted to kind of keep the ball going. There are, there are books that will take place in the past, yes, that will show you different points of view of things, for sure.
Okay, that's cool. Excellent, man. Well, Josh, I think you did a good job answering. Oh, let's see.
What do you got?
Yeah, I know. I'm looking here. That's funny. I don't think this is it's a cute idea for a story. Will it be revealed that Ultraman and Superwoman's child is impersonating John Kent?
Not as far as I know. I don't think so.
I don't think that's where Andy's going, but I like the idea.
Listen, I understand. Not as far as I know.
That's awesome, man. No, that's very funny. No, honestly, man, I think Future State's been a blast reading, and I've really enjoyed a lot of the other special books. I love anytime there's the anthologies that come out.
Oh yeah,
those are so.
I was like super. I have weird moments with anthologies. Like there was a time where I wasn't like the biggest fan of them, and now I get more like the one that came out this week, which is Love is a Battlefield. I really like that one. I read it for the first time this morning.
I haven't read it yet. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I think it's one of the better anthologies they've done. I think this format is really interesting. The stuff that they're moving forward with, and yeah, I don't know. I like one and dones a lot.
Me too.
I like being able to read annuals. Some of my favorite stuff has been annuals or one and dones. There's a book that I'm working on for this year that is going to be a lot of one and dones.
Great.
Because I think they're fun to do. They're just fun to do, and yeah. I like some of these new formats that are coming through.
No, and I talked to Ron V about Justice League Dark and converting that into the 10 pages in the Justice League anthology and everything.
Yeah.
And I really think that the last few years of the anthology books have shown that you could tell a really strong story in 10 pages. And I think that's really impressive.
He and I talked, I don't know when this was, maybe last month. Last month we talked about his plans for like the magic stuff and Justice League Dark and what's that?
I said Swamp Thing and everything.
Yeah, Swamp Thing. Well, because some of the stuff happens in Infinite Frontier Zero or things he can play with, right? So I was basically pitching him not only Infinite Frontier Zero, but I was pitching him like the bigger scope plan for the next year, and we were discussing it, and he had a lot of really good thoughts and some really good ideas. But that was funny about Justice League Dark. He was explaining to me how there was a part of him that was like, how do you do this? Do you do like really shorter things, or like? And he was like, no, I'm going crazier than I possibly can in 10 pages. Like I'm gonna go so over the top and nuts in these 10 pages. It was awesome. Again, like I was talking about before, but you can tell somebody's like really pumped up. And they feel like challenged a little, and they feel like they're on fire with it. And I think that's how Rom feels with Swamp Thing and Justice League Dark. He's a really exciting creator. I like his work a lot, and I like talking with him. We were talking about Swamp Thing at Comics Pro a year ago, we were talking about that book, and so I'm really excited for him now to have that come out. I got to read it last week, and it's great.
That's excellent, man. All right, I'm looking here to see. I mean, hold on one second here. Oh yeah, so it will event Leviathan come out soon, and will it have a big effect on the Infinite Frontier direction?
I think they're talking about Checkmate, right? I don't know what the plan is for Checkmate or when Checkmate is coming out. I'm aware of some of the plans around it. I don't know for sure when it's coming out. I do need to talk to Bendis. This came up last week. They were like, I should definitely talk to Bendis about some of his thoughts on it to line it up with some other things they're planning. My answer is yes. If the original plan we had for it, the stuff that I had heard is still happening, those are definitely things that I want to use. In terms of, it might not be this year. It might be stuff that we start talking about for this time next year.
Okay. And
in terms of plans we have is connected stuff.
Amelia wants to know if Future State will affect Robin.
No. That's Damian wasn't in Future State at all. And it doesn't. That's our book is completely disconnected from that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no connection between the two.
Fair enough. I know Jurgens had him in Batman Beyond in the future, and obviously was running the League of Assassins, and also being challenged for the leadership of League of Assassins.
Yeah,
which I thought was a fun story.
I read that stuff. Obviously, like I said, I'm a big fan of Dan Jurgens', and so I was keeping up with that book. But yeah, once I even got on, I went back and reread a lot of that stuff just to make sure I wasn't like. I wanted to make sure like what was the story of Damian in that book going forward, just so I could play with some of the stuff if I wanted to,
Sure.
Yeah, whenever I work on any of these books, I try to read all of it. I try to catch it as much of it as I can to figure out what I want to do.
I understand. Let's see. And then here, now, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this or no. Is there any chance we'll see Bart Allen, Impulse, in some other book, and the rest of the Flash family, other than Wally and Barry?
Yes. And even in Love's Battlefield today, there was a story with Wallace and Avery was in that issue today. There's definitely plans for more than just Barry and Wally, and I look forward to some of those plans coming out. I don't know. I don't want to get too deep into that stuff again, but I'm a big fan of those characters. Like Bart's one of my favorites, and so I know there's stuff coming with them that'll be pretty cool.
Okay, and I'll assure Wesley that obviously Dan Jurgens is a very big part of DC, and I imagine has some new stuff coming up that we haven't heard about.
Yeah, he has a really cool book that's coming with an artist that I am crazy jealous about. Yeah, he has a book coming that I'm super jealous of. When I heard who was drawing it, I was like, it's another one of those artists that's like a bucket list artist. So Dan gets to work with this artist that I think is like one of the best artists at DC on this book that I think will make a lot of people happy. Same thing, like Andy is doing Crime Syndicate. Robert Venditti is also working on a book on a project with DC that I'm also super jealous about. When I first heard it, sometimes you hear about these projects and you're just like, oh man. There was a book that I pitched DC. I should clarify. I didn't pitch. I would ask about it. I would be like, oh, if you guys ever do this, I want to do it. Or if this ever happens, I want to do it. And now somebody is doing it, and that was one of those things where I'm like, wait, so somebody is doing it now? Is there any opening, like a one shot or something? But there's some stuff coming that I think is gonna like really surprise people. I think stuff is gonna like. There's a couple projects and a couple books that I think are gonna like blow people away. They're gonna be really, really happy with, and not just the project, but who's working on it. I think is gonna make people. There's some beautiful stuff coming. It's fun when you get these projects and you start getting art and you start like hazing your friends with the art. Like I'll send something to James or to Tom or Scott, like, and be like, look at this cover, look at this page, look at this thing, and then they'll send me something and I'm like, oh, son of a, like, that's so cool. There's a lot of that going on right now. And there's sometimes like, I'll find out about a book and I'll just be like, can I see it? Like there's so much stuff that hasn't been announced yet that I'm just like, can I see it? What do you got? You got covers, you got designs, you got art. There's a couple books where like the issues are done, like the first issue's done, a few that haven't been announced, and I'm like, can I see those books? And they just look amazing. There's a lot of really cool stuff.
No, again, I spoke to Scott yesterday, and he told me all of his collaborators for Best Jacket, and I'm sure you've seen samples of that stuff. That's great, and I'm thrilled for him and the people he's working with. I know that that's the case with Tom King with Mitch and Doc doing Strange Adventures, and certainly Clay doing Batman Catwoman. So no, you guys are all
and the stuff that Scott's doing all looks really, really great. I mean, he's been working on that stuff for so long that I think, and he has so many projects. I'm sure he told you last night. I mean, he's doing a lot, and all of them sound really cool, and they're all so different from each other. They're all drastically different. They're all really different kinds of books for him too. They're not gonna. I think those books are really gonna kind of, I guess, surprise people. I know I said that before about the stuff DC's doing, but.
Well, he mentioned he's doing that. He's doing that Western with Panosian, and I'm like, oh, that sounds amazing. I can't imagine.
Did he talk about that last night?
That's all he said. That's literally all he said.
That book has a really great title, so that's what I'll leave it there. Yeah, that's something he's been working on for a long time too. Yeah, I wish. I mean, I'm working on a book with Howard Porter, who's like one of my favorite creators ever. I actually met him when I was waiting in line. Back in like 1998 at San Diego Comic-Con, and being this kid and just being like, can you give me a sketch? Can I get a sketch from you? And he did Hourman for me. He did
that's awesome.
Yeah, the Hourman, the Android Hourman.
Sure.
And from DC 1 Million, he did that for me then. And every time I've got a chance to work with him, like that's a guy I'm going to work with forever. Like I'll work with Howard forever, and so he and I are working on a book right now that won't be announced for like I don't even know, a long time. But we're working on something together that's going to be definitely tied into bigger stuff we're doing. But part of it was just like, how can I do something that's really fun with Howard for a while that we can have the time on and the lead in for it. And so that's what we're doing now. I was actually working on that today a bit, and he turned in cover designs yesterday. Yeah, and they're really cool. But yeah, Howard is great. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else am I working on stuff with that I can talk about. I'm trying to think.
Well, and also
that's the most I can talk about.
And you've got pages together in Infinite Frontier.
We got the Flash scene together. Yeah. Everyone I got to work with in Infinite Frontiers are all people I wish I could work with again. And even like Robson Roca, who I worked with on Justice League, Future State stuff. That's somebody who I want to work with again. He's on another book that hasn't been announced yet. But he is somebody that like I want to steal and work with again. I think that he has such a great energy in his pages that I definitely want to work with him again.
Very cool. People are asking if we should expect an Aquaman solo.
Aquaman. Somebody else asked me this on another podcast I did a few weeks ago, I think.
Okay.
There are plans for Aquaman. I don't want to say anything right now about it, but I think it's things that people will be happy with. There's definitely a really cool plan coming together for that character. He comes up all the time, and a lot of people were pitching for it. And Aquaman was something that came up with me. Like, we had talked about me possibly doing Aquaman like a year ago. It came up about what to do around this time, right? Like, do I do Aquaman after Kelly Sue is done, after some other stuff has happened? And we had talked about it, and I just wasn't in the place right then, especially with what I was saying of like trying to do something different and what I felt really like obsessed with. But of course, after I was like, oh no, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that, I started having all these Aquaman ideas and different thoughts on what I could do with Aquaman. But I know there is a plan for Aquaman like coming together that I think is really cool. It's I don't want to give it away. There's a really cool element to it that I think is going to be really fun for Aquaman fans. But we'll see. I mean, these things definitely take time to develop, and you want to make sure you have the right creators. This is a thing I was on this other podcast and I asked, and let me ask you this question, John.
Shoot.
Let me ask you this. All right. So do you feel if your favorite character, all right, let's question one. Who's your favorite character at DC?
Favorite DC character.
Who's your favorite character?
I got to think about that. Is it Superman? Is it someone else?
Well, Superman's tough with this question.
Yeah, all right. I'll say the question.
Okay, the question. All right. Now, do you feel? That's a great answer. Do you feel the question is diminished as a character if they don't have a book?
No.
Yeah, I don't feel that way either.
No, I point to the way Brian used him in his stories and the way that others have, and no, I mean, like Mr. Terrific has a great role in Strange Adventures.
Yeah.
I mean, that's and again, Adam Strange had a great role in Brian's Superman run. I mean, that's the thing. So no, I mean, there are ways of using characters in other books and having them work. And frankly, as opposed to sometimes introducing a brand new character all on their own, I'm like, wow, that's a big roll of the dice. Why don't you, introduce them in somebody else's book, make them an important part of the story?
I mean, I think that I know that with Aquaman, there's talk of or plans, I should say, actual plans of him being in more than just Justice League, leading into other things. But I've always thought about this. I've wondered, because I know people. I hear from people who are upset when their favorite characters don't have books, and I get that because it's your favorite character. You want to read New Adventure, and you also kind of want to know your favorite character, what they're doing, and if they're safe, right? Like you want to make sure they're doing something.
Sure.
I mean, Aquaman had such, him and Mara and Andy had such a happy ending at the end of Kelly Sue's run that I think it's okay to kind of like rest that character for a minute so that you can let DC go to creators who are passionate and actually take the time to build something really cool versus just like, we got to get it out. We got to get it out.
I agree.
Like, that sucks. You don't want that. You don't want a book that is just like, well, we got to get in the grind and we got to put this thing out just because. I would rather wait and have somebody tell a really powerful story. And I say this, and I know I'm being a hypocrite when I say this because I was on Flash for over 100 issues, but it's like, nobody needs to be in a book that long, and no one needs to tell these stories that are that big. I would I think of this a lot lately of like, I think Hush is like perfect in a lot of ways. It's 12 issues, it's a condensed story, and you can look at something as powerful as Year One. It's like Year One is 4 issues long. I would rather have more of that, I think. And again, I say this, I know I'm being a hypocrite talking about this, considering I have these like long ass runs on some of these things, especially Flash. But I would rather have a really powerful Aquaman story. And I say this as a fan of Aquaman, I would really have a really powerful, really well done, like greatest hits, evergreen Aquaman be done than we're just making it because we have to make it. We have to make sure this thing comes out monthly. I'd rather be able to change it up a bit and let it rest for a moment just so we could build something bigger and better.
Nathan has a good question, and I'm surprised that I didn't ask it already myself. But how has editorial oversight and coordination changed compared to DC in, say, 2019?
For me, I don't know if I would say it's that different. It's different people I talk to, right? But at the same time, I've known Ben Abernathy's a group editor of Batman. I've known Ben for 15 years,
sure,
maybe longer, right? I've known him for a long time. Had a relationship with him. Jamie Rich, who worked as an editor here in Portland, but then was a creator for a long time. He was somebody I knew here in Portland. He was somebody I would talk to, and so I've known these editors for a really long time, and I've had these relationships with them, and that hasn't changed. Like being able to have these conversations and have candid, conversations, but also being able to talk about story, that hasn't really changed. In terms of like Marie Javins, this is the only difference with Marie Javins, is that, she was a group editor, she was a executive editor at DC, and she was somebody I would talk to and I would, go have meetings with, and I could get on the phone. Now that she's editor-in-chief, she is crazy busy. That is the biggest difference.
Okay.
Like she is insanely busy. And so getting to talk to her is less. But when we do get to talk, we do talk for a long time. We talk about a lot of stuff. I think some of that's changed, whereas people are maybe a little busier than others. I think some of those conversations have changed in terms of, making sure things are more positive and fun, have maybe changed in places. I think a lot of us, when you're working with editors and you're working with other creators, and you do it as long as you've been doing it, you build these friendships with them, and you build sort of, a dynamic with them, and you start to be able to have just real conversations. And 2020 was hard for a lot of people in different ways, and I think being able to approach them and talk to them like that, that we've all gone through this thing, and being able to sit down and talk with them about it and know that you're in a position. And I recognize I'm also in a very different position than a lot of other creators. That's something I should say. There are other creators that are not doing the kind of work I'm doing, or the kind of, it's like with with Death Metal and Metal, like I was a consultant on those books, like a paid consultant. It wasn't just me in a room, bullshitting my way through something. It's like they paid us to do that job, to read those scripts, to talk to creators, to talk to editorial, help build this event. I have a very different relationship with DC than most creators, right? And so my point of view of it might be different from somebody else. There might be other creators who their relationship with DC has completely changed over the last year, or how they talk with editors or the plans. But in terms of oversight, again, I'm not sure. I feel as though for me it hasn't changed that drastically. It's just I've always been really able to go to editorial and pitch ideas and talk stuff. I'm already kind of like a nosy person when it comes to DC, and I'm always kind of already like had my hands and stuff and asking questions anyway. And being, again, like I said earlier, I can be very opinionated. So none of that's really changed. I think there is an energy of we all have the same goals, and there are times where I think one of the bigger changes for me is like, here is this cool story bit down here. Just how do we get to that has changed a little bit, in ways that I'm really excited about. I think that editorial feels energized in places. Some of the creators feels energized. And I think they feel a little bit different kinds of freedom and different direction in certain things. And so that's definitely changed in certain places. But I guess my point of view of it, because of where I'm at with the company and just the conversations I have and those relationships, it hasn't changed that drastically.
Okay. Now, several people have asked this question. Maud is the most recent. Are there any plans for Hal Jordan in the future?
Yes.
Okay.
That's all I got for you. I'm sorry.
That's all you should. That's all you should say. Yes or no. That's very good. Absolutely. No.
I will never ruin someone else's. I will never ruin someone else's shit. Like their story or the stuff they're working on.
No, yeah. And seriously, and other people are like, well, when are we going to hear these announcements? When DC's ready to give them. How's that sound, man? And I'm being the asshole. I'm the asshole saying that. Listen, that's not Josh. That's me.
I know, but that is
everybody.
That is how it is. I mean, you don't want to. Well, here's something to think about: is you don't want some of these things to get lost too, right?
Right.
You don't want it to be like if you announce like 5 books in the same day or something. That sucks. Like someone's gonna get lost in that, and so it's gonna take time. It takes time, and especially right now, I think that you know what? I will say this. This is something I think is different now: is that ability to try to do it when you can, right? Like take your time on something has maybe changed a little bit. And so it's like, yeah, let's be patient with some of this stuff. Let's try to do it right and make sure that when it comes out, it's been tested. Like as Scott would say, I'm not sure if he has ever said this to you, but people are kicking the tires on these things a little bit differently. So yeah, it's going to take some time to get some of these announcements going. I'm sorry to say it's going to take time. I can be very impatient with this stuff too. I go a little nuts sometimes with it. There are times I want to get it out now. Like there are times where, let me tell you, there's art coming out on books that I want to show off so badly. There are times where I'll get a page and I'm like, oh my God, there's like a one-off story I wrote that won't come out until August that's being drawn. And every time a page comes out, I'm like, can I just post one panel of this? Can I just post something? I just want to show people how cool this looks, but it's too soon. And, you also don't want to burn because here's the thing. It's like, it's much easier to talk about something for a month before it comes out than talk about it like, 6 months to a year before something comes out. I feel like it burns people out. Like you want to talk to something, you want to start talking about something closer to when it's coming out.
I can appreciate that. Now, all right. And again, I'll bring up the Zapruder film photo of the Infinite Frontier wraparound cover. But Shisui wants to know, is the implication of Infinite Frontiers cover that Batman and Superman are going to be shared roles rather than Clark and Bruce being outright replaced?
Yeah, nobody's replacing Clark and Bruce. Like, as far as I know, nobody is replacing Clark and Bruce. I might have missed the meeting that day, but nobody's replacing Clark and Bruce.
Well, and also up here next to Nightwing, isn't that the Golden Age Superman? Or
no, that's President Superman.
Oh, that's President Superman. Oh, I see. Again, it's so tiny, and I don't have my glasses on right now. Shame on me. Of course, that's President Superman. Very cool.
Calvin. He is a really fun character, right?
Excellent.
I like writing him a lot. I've only been able to write him a little bit so far, yeah, I like him a bunch.
And it's funny now. Again, looking at the cover was something that that Clark wanted us to talk about, and that is the whole controversy with Shazam.
I should have told Clark not to bring that up. I would say if anybody has any questions about that, you should read the whole book. That is my thing about that.
It is in Infinite Frontier Zero Shazam whatever.
I mean, it's a comment that somebody makes when they see him, but then like immediately the next page, Superman is talking about Black Adam, calling him Black Adam. So, I mean, it's a one line.
Maybe it's a joke. Exactly.
It's a gag. It's a joke.
Yeah.
It's a joke. Yeah, it's a gag. I don't even know if I call it a joke. I mean, I think if you read it in context, it's just a small little thing.
Okay.
It's in there. Yeah, but I would say read it in context. Read the whole book. You know, it's one of those things where you can totally dissect these books and pull different little pieces of it. But it's always better. You know, it's like anything, any movie or any TV show. If you get the chance to read it all together, you get that context and get to see what it actually is about. Yeah.
Hilarious.
Oh, Clark.
Well, we'll know in a couple of weeks when Infinite Frontier Zero comes out. Is it 2 weeks away?
It's March 2nd. So what is that? 3 weeks? Yeah, it's pretty quick.
3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks away.
It's here pretty quick. Yeah, I read
awesome.
it. I read that thing like a million times, just checking it constantly. I was so paranoid, just trying to make it, hit all the beats we needed to hit. Like me, Scott, and James read it a few different times. I must have read it like a million times.
No, I'm with you, man. Oh, that's hilarious. Wesley's like, Josh can handle the tough questions. Don't go easy on him. Yeah, you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about that.
I try. I mean, listen, I try to be honest. But again, I will never. I don't want to mess up somebody else's story.
Well, and
there are certain things that are like I can talk about what I'm working on or the stuff that I know about or different creators that I'm excited about. When it comes to some of the really big picture stuff at DC, I mean, you got to go to Marie, you got to go to Jim Lee.
Right.
I mean, there's stuff, that they're working on that are much more big picture than anything I'm involved with.
And again, knowing when announcements are coming out, I'm sorry, I don't think that's that big of a question. And then, frankly, that's like I always say, I'm not here to screw up anybody's marketing plan. If they're not ready to talk about it,
there's a book.
Don't worry, it'll come out, and then the information will come out well in time for everyone to order shit. So I mean, like you said, there's just too much to. Sometimes there's too much to announce. You don't want something to slip through the cracks.
Yeah, well, also you don't want you don't want to announce something and have it go where it's like, I don't know. It's my personal opinion on this. You don't want to announce something and then it's like coming next year. Like that would just
truly. I mean, Milestone. We've been waiting for this for a couple of years now. They made the announcement, and no. I know you're not here to explain why, and it's not your fault. But I'm just like that's just a reality of an announcement that was made, and now because it was made as early as it was, and obviously they're trying to get it right. I know of a couple other titles that on background I've heard about, and it's been a couple of years, and also of things that didn't ever happen.
Oh, sure,
because
I mean, there's books that take some time, and. Yeah, you just want to make sure you get it right. Because it would suck to get it wrong. Could you imagine? Like, you can only shoot some of these things so many times, right? You can only. What's the word? I'm trying to think of the right word for this, but it's like there are some triggers you can only pull once, right? Some genies you can only, you only get out of that ball at one time. You can't shove them back in. So it's like you just want to make sure you get it right that time because it sucks to do it wrong. Yeah. When you stumble out the gate, it's the worst.
Well, and it takes that much longer to try and fix it. If if it fails, you pull it and then you figure out what went wrong, and you can't come right back with a new version.
Like with Milestone, I never asked about Milestone. That's like other people working on that.
Sure.
And the Jim does. As a fan, I'm looking forward to it. Like,
of course,
I want to get out there. Yeah, for sure.
No, there's a ton of great characters there. Absolutely, man.
Yeah,
and even in the chat, people have been mentioning characters like Icon, and it'd be great to see Icon come back right now. Totally agree. Absolutely agree. Let's see here. Try to think if there's anything else here that we need to discuss. Here, and obviously this has already been answered, but we'll repeat it. You do not have to read Future State to read Infinite Frontier.
It's like anything else. I mean, you can definitely read it, and you'll probably get something extra to it, right? Like it's additive to it. You're able to kind of read it, and you might get a glimpse into something that another reader wouldn't. But you can definitely read it without ever anything else. Like we had a lot of conversations about that, about trying to make sure that it was, something you can kind of read by itself. If there's definitely hints of things from DC in the past, and Rebirth and Death Metal. But I think if you were coming into it, the most you need to know is like all these characters are starting a new chapter. And there's a scene like, Wonder Woman and the Spectre are talking about it, where it's like starting new chapters of your life can be scary, right? They can come with wonder or terror, but you still have to do it. You still got to keep going, You still got to keep reading that book, right? You got to keep making your life move forward and keep going to these next chapters, regardless how scary it is. And Wonder Woman sees that throughout the issue. She sees like how all these different characters in DC are being brave in the face of change, and yeah, it's being brave when they know that you have to kind of go through these crazy changes. There's a line at the very beginning, and I thought about this line when I wrote it, but it was about us, like life in the last year. And at the very beginning, it's like, life will never be the way it was. Like life will never be exactly the same way.
Sure.
And I think as we've all kind of experienced it, we're never going backward. Like we're not going to go back to COVID. Life will forever be different after 2020 for a variety of reasons, right? And I think that I wanted to say something about that. I wanted to talk about how that is how it's going to be, and that's okay. Like we don't need to go back. We can keep going forward. We can take that momentum, but you have to be able to be brave to do that, and how that can be hard sometimes.
All right? Now I've got two good questions for you to wrap up, because you've been great with your time. But first of all,
right?
Well, I mean, and I mean, any creator-owned content coming up for you? Kill the John wants to know.
My creator-owned stuff all got like pushed back. So
Sure.
I had this huge creator-owned plan, and I had all these books I was gearing up. So in my office over here, I have a wall, and it's broken up by different projects, different companies, different things I want to do, and, like artists I want to work with, just long-term goals, that kind of thing. And then the biggest section is creator-owned, and I have like, God, here it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 12. All right, so here's the deal. So when I started DC again 5 years ago, I was working on a lot of creator-owned stuff. I had wrapped up Ghosted. I was doing Nailbiter, a couple other things.
Yeah.
But I was kind of hitting a wall on a creator-owned level. And I actually talked to Image about this, to Skybound about this. I was hitting a wall on a creator-owned way of coming up with new projects. And I wanted a new challenge. I wanted to try something different. And that was part of why I started talking to DC again. And I went in and was like, I want to work on the Flash, and started doing that stuff. And that's why I signed the exclusive to work for DC. Because I was like, oh, I want to try something different. Within 6 months of me working for DC, I suddenly had like a ton of creator-owned ideas. So I've just been stockpiling them this whole time and slowly developing them. I'm talking to different artists about different projects. There's certain things in certain stages of development. Back in the spring, I had plans to try to launch stuff at the end of 2020 and going into 2021. I had different stuff. There was stuff I wanted to launch in October last year, March this year. Once the pandemic hit, it changed my plans drastically. And so I had to shift a lot of things around. There were certain projects where it's like I'm talking to an artist, and it's like this happened really early on, where I would be talking to an artist and I wasn't ready yet. Like I wouldn't have a script ready for like 6 months, or I knew where I was and my schedule was going to take a while. And like one artist in particular, he reached out and he was like, listen, I got offered a job to do a graphic novel. This is back like March of last year. He got offered to do a job on a graphic novel. It's going to take him a year to do. He has to do it. And especially when you're considering we're going into a pandemic and people were worried about money and work and everything. And I was like, yes, you have to take that job. Like, I'm not going to have you wait for me. Like, that's unfair, Like, you need to take that job, take that gig. And so a lot of those kinds of things happen. But yeah, I have definitely a lot of creator-owned stuff. Like I said, I have like 20 different creator-owned projects I want to do. There are different stages of development. Some I'm really excited about. Some will come sooner than others. It'll take a little bit of time on those to get them all rolling. But I definitely have a lot that I'm working on.
Okay. And then to wrap up, because before Infinite Frontier comes out, I'm assuming Future State Gotham comes out before that. Am I right?
Or was that after? Future State Gotham is May.
Oh, is that an ongoing? Is that what?
Yeah, it's an ongoing. Yeah, the first arc is going to focus a bit on Jason Todd, but he is sort of a POV through the whole book. But it's really about pulling from everything pulling from everything in Future State, like the Gotham part of it, the Batman part of it. A lot of it's going to be through Jason Todd's point of view, as he gets tasked to something bad happens at Gotham. He gets tasked with hunting down Tim Fox, Chase Fox, and that brings him into conflict with other people in Gotham. So there's a lot of it's really fun. I'm working on that with the same artist that I read Hood with, Giannis, Dennis Culver, who did Crone and Burnout.
I know Dennis,
and
sure.
Extinction. Yeah, he's co-writing it with. But yeah, that comes out in May, and
okay,
I don't know, it's really exciting. We were just talking about it earlier today, some of the plans we have for it. And actually, when I get done here, I have to go look at a bunch of art for that. That's why, like, Dennis texted me like minutes before the podcast and was like, "Please look at that art tonight." And I'm like, "Okay, I will." So that book's really cool too. It's going to be very different. That was one of my things Red Hood when I was doing. I just wanted to do something different. Like that's why in the first Red Hood chapter that we did that was in Dark Knight Detective, or I think it's Dark Detective #2. Jason doesn't say a word for the first like 12 pages almost. Originally, it was gonna be the first 14, and then I ended up having him talk. Like he has like one line before page 14, and then he starts as like becomes a faucet, just talking about all kinds of stuff. But I just want to try something different, and that's what those books are. It means just doing something different, different style for me too. I think a lot of books I'm working on right now are going to be it's a different style of writing than what I was doing when I was doing Flash. Yeah.
No, and I love Dennis's art. I remember the series.
He's actually co-writing. Yeah,
I didn't realize that. That's amazing because Edison Rex is series with Chris Robertson. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
So that's cool. All right, one fast, quick thing here. Could Connor Hawk return someday? Are there plans for Kyle Rayner?
Of course, this had to be the last question. Kyle Rayner is like one of my favorite Green Lanterns. I actually the other day I have a Green Lantern toy in the garage. I found I have to bring it in here. I like that character a lot. I actually don't know for sure. Kyle has a really quick panel in Infinite Frontier 0, and he is talked about in the books. You know where he is going and what he's doing. And that is my answer to that question.
I like it. All right, fair enough, man. No, you've been good, Josh. I appreciate
Thank you.
And as always, good to talk to you. I'm so sorry that we didn't talk last year, other than for the Black Friday event, and shame on me. But no, seriously, you got a lot coming up, so I'm sure we'll be talking more this year.
Yeah, there's more coming. There's so much more coming.
Excellent, man. Well, seriously, everybody asked great questions, and thank you,
everyone, for good. Thank you, everyone, for asking your questions. I hope I got to as many of them as I could. I know there's always a lot of stuff I can't really get into. Just be patient. I think there's a lot of really good stuff coming for DC.
Very excited about everything that again, I've enjoyed Future State, and Infinite Frontier sounds intriguing. So I'm looking forward to talking to everybody more about some of the things happening at DC. So
yeah, hopefully we can get you a copy. Yeah,
that would be lovely. That would be lovely. Absolutely, man. All right, Josh, have a good night. Thanks again.
You too. Thank you.
Take it easy. Josh Williamson, everybody. That was great. And thanks a lot, everyone, for doing this. Look at this, man. Look who needs a haircut desperately. I should probably take care of that sooner than later. But thank you, everybody, for watching. We had a great time and enjoyed all of your questions and comments. And I hope you appreciated my editorial little bits there. Until next time, stay safe, stay happy.